I want to say welcome. Thanks for joining us today. This is a boat on course session from the National Safe Boating Council, and I'm very, very pleased that you've taken time out of your day. It's beautiful here. I'm in actually Southwest Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful day. I hope that you're having a wonderful day at your neck of the woods as well. Today we're going to talk about responsibilities between vessels. This is going to be a pretty heavy PowerPoint slide because we're going to dig into the navigation rules. So I want this to be as interactive as possible, but we are limited to just what we can put in the chat, and maybe raise your hands if you have questions. And there's only a couple of us, so we should be able to address those as we go. I'm Pamela Dillon. To summarize my background, I've been in boating and boating safety for a number of decades. And I like to just summarize by saying I help save lives by developing and implementing national standards and best practices of boating safety, and also conducting a lot of on-water training, both powerboat and paddle sports training. If you've participated in these sessions, then you know that the sessions will be recorded and shared on the NSBC website. I would like you to go ahead, please, and find that chat feature. It's probably at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Go ahead and put in your name and where you're located. Tell us a little bit about yourself. If you're a Coast Guard captain, let us know that, or just what your interest is in this presentation. And I also invite you to raise your hand, give a thumbs up, use the little raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. We want to keep this as interactive as possible moving forward. Today's topic is responsibilities between vessels. And I always like to start with a did you know? So did you know that navigation rule violations are among the top 10 known primary contributing factors of incidents? And as you can see from the screen, many of these incidents result in a number of deaths, a lot of injuries, and we know that these numbers are only the ones that are reported. For every injury accident, there's probably dozens of injury accidents that never get reported to the Coast Guard and get collected in this information. So understanding navigation rules is really, really, really important for boating and boating safety. So what is Rule 18 and why does it matter? First of all, I want to start by talking about Rule 1 in the navigation rules. And we're primarily focused on inland rules today, but I will be talking a little bit about international rules because it does apply in this case of responsibility between vessels. But Rule 1 application, these rules apply to all vessels upon the inland waters of the United States and to vessels of the United States on Canadian waters of the Great Lakes, to the extent that there's no conflict with Canadian law. And as I already said, nav rule violations are very common in near misses and injury cases because operators sometimes misjudge stopping distance and do not understand operator responsibilities. The Coast Guard navigation rules are available online as well as in printed format. Here's the email address to get to the information that I'll be reviewing with you today. And the online version lists all of the navigation rules, and they've got these wonderful links that you can go that you can check out for each and every one of these, and they all apply depending on your situation. Even though we're just targeting in on one specific rule, that doesn't mean that the other ones you can ignore. The Rule 18 is actually listed under the conduct of vessels inside of one another. And there have been other boat on course sessions where we've already talked about overtaking and head-on situations, crossing situations, give way, stand-on vessels. We've talked about a number of the other rules, safe speed, traffic schemes, a number of other rules. So I encourage you to go back and look at those recordings if you have any questions. But we're going to do a deep dive into Rule 18, responsibilities between vessels. And of course, we have to start by looking at some exceptions. There are three, and we'll take these one by one. It says that responsibilities between vessels, except where rules 9, 10, and 13 otherwise require. So what exactly are rules 9, 10, and 13? Rule 9 addresses narrow channels, and small vessels under 20 meters and sailing vessels must not impede vessels that can only navigate within the channel. As a general rule, you want to stay to the outside edge of the channel, as near to the outer limit on her starboard side as is safe and practical. And just understand that in these kinds of narrow channel situations, that there is a defined traffic pattern and hierarchy as you navigate those. And again, that's a whole different rule that you could dive deep into. There's also an exception for Rule 10, which are traffic separation schemes. And these are generally found on charts. That's probably one of the easiest way to really understand what these traffic separation schemes may look like. They're usually in this magenta kind of color, and you just study the details of the traffic patterns and the ways to join or exit. It's very much like getting in and off of an interstate highway. There are defined ways to move toward the outer edge and then angle out. You don't want to, if you have to cross a traffic separation scheme, you need to do it at right angles. You can't hang out in the middle of these except under certain circumstances. So there are exceptions when it comes to operation within a traffic separation scheme. And of course, another exception to what we're going to be reviewing here has to do in overtaking situations. If you are overtaking, then the other boat, you need to stay clear of the boat that is being overtaken. And if you are the boat that is being overtaken, you need to maintain your course and speed. So that's common information that a lot of boaters hopefully understand. And in those cases, then the overtaking vessel needs to stay clear regardless of how they fall into this hierarchy. So we know that except for rules 9, 10, and 13, responsibilities between vessels. And there's a lot of words on this page, but let me walk you through it. First of all, part A, it talks about a power-driven vessel when underway shall keep clear of, and we're going to talk about these, but then it also describes a sailing vessel and a vessel engaged in fishing. So let's take a look at what that actually means before we start talking about responsibilities between the vessels. First of all, a vessel includes every description of watercraft, including non-displacement craft, wing and ground, that's WIG craft. I have never in all my years seen a wing craft, but I know they're out there. They're different from seaplanes. But any of these vessels used or capable of being used as a means of transportation on the water. Of course, a power-driven vessel means any vessel propelled by machinery. A sailing vessel only is a sailing vessel when it's under sail. If they're using propelling machinery, then it is considered a power-driven vessel. And vessels engaged in fishing does not necessarily mean your everyday fishing boat. Instead, it means vessels that are fishing with nets, expansive number of lines, trawls, other fishing apparatus, which restrict maneuverability. As I said, it doesn't include vessels where the apparatus does not restrict maneuverability. So again, these rules are applicable to those vessels. But then it also talks about, for instance, a power-driven vessel underway shall keep out of the way of a vessel not under command, a vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver, a vessel engaged in fishing, and a sailing vessel. So let's take a look at what those terms mean. Vessel not under command, and vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver. So a vessel not under command, there's something going on the vessel. There's some exceptional circumstance. There may be a fire on board. There may be a machinery breakdown. And in any case, it is unable to maneuver as required by these rules and is therefore unable to keep out of the way of another vessel. So in those cases, that vessel has, it is at the hierarchy within the responsibilities between vessels. That may be a little bit different. It actually is a bit different than a vessel that is restricted in her ability to maneuver, because these vessels, it's the nature of her work that is keeping her restricted. She may be, laying, servicing, or picking up navigation marks, cables, pipelines, dredging, surveying, underwater operations. There may be a whole number of other, including mine clearing, towing. Because of the nature of her work, she is restricted in her ability to maneuver. So that puts her at the top, near the top of this hierarchy that we're exploring here. And so you can see it's at the very, very top is power-driven vessels that are, meet one of these, or power-driven vessels, sailing vessels, and vessels engaged in fishing, but that's not the only parts of this Rule 18. There's also a D, E, and F section, and this is where we get a little bit of a difference between the inland rules and international rules. And for most of us in the continental United States, if you never go boating in Alaska or outside of the U.S., you probably are only familiar with the inland rules, but there are differences when it comes to international rules and even international markings. Primarily, this Boat on Course series is looking at the inland rules. But in international rules for this hierarchy, they're also looking at constrained by draft, which is also a little bit different in the international definitions, a little bit different than restricted in her ability to maneuver. When the U.S. adopted the inland rules, they just felt that they were kind of in the same category. So from what I understand, the U.S. just didn't, for the inland rules, did not pick up on that international constrained by draft. So we have no definition in the inland rules on that, but it still applies. It also talks about seaplanes and these wing and ground aircraft. And these wing and ground aircraft, both of these seaplanes and the wing craft, need to keep clear of all other vessels. Wing and ground craft is a craft that operates on the water surface. And let's just take a look at how that is defined. It's a craft that means a multimodal craft, which in its main operational mode flies in close proximity to the surface by utilizing surface effect action. So it's something like a hovercraft, or a craft that really just uses that surface effect action to navigate, and they have to keep clear of basically everybody else. And of course, a seaplane includes any watercraft designed to maneuver on the water. So those are all part of the Rule 18 responsibilities between vessels. Now, I've given you a lot of definitions and, looked at some of the language of the law, but how can we remember what's what? And so commonly this mnemonic is used to remember the order of responsibilities between vessels. And that is, new reels catch fish, so purchase some weekly. New reels catch fish, so purchase some weekly. If you go down through it, not under command is the N in new. Reels is the restricted in the ability to maneuver. Catch is constrained by draft, which again, that's just international, but it applies here because they are restricted, in fact. Fishing applies to fishing vessels. So applies to sailing. Purchase applies to power. Some applies to seaplanes. And then weekly is wing in ground. So if you commit this to memory and then remember what each of those letters stand for, it could help you remember who in any given situation has the priority for navigation in a particular situation. Often people will ask, well, I mainly navigate during the day, so how do I even know when one of these situations exists? And so that's why I wanted to share just the day shapes. Day shapes, for those some people, you may never notice a day shape on a vessel or may not know what it means or what it is. But in every one of these situations, according to the nav rules, the vessel should be communicating to us using day shapes what their circumstance is. We all study the lighting patterns, and all of these different vessels have unique lighting patterns. But let's take a look at some of the day shapes that you may be familiar with. So just starting here on the screen here with the two balls, two black balls. As a matter of fact, at night you would see red over red lighting. And if you look here, you can see that that is a vessel not under command. If you're in an area that has a lot of this type of larger craft activity and you're not familiar with the day shapes, I would encourage you to just print out a copy, have a copy on your vessel. They're in the navigation rules, but a quick reference guide is always a good thing to have. And that will help you really sort out what's going on in the waterway. A vessel restricted in its ability to maneuver, it's got a ball, a diamond, and a ball. And at night, that would be red, white, red. As a matter of fact, they often say for not under command in red, white, red, they often say the captain is dead. That's a way to understand the meaning of those vessels and what is going on at night, because for whatever reason they are not being actively piloted. And so again, look for those vessels. Constrained by draft, that's again an international requirement. We'll have a cylinder, a black cylinder. Trawling would be, well, let's go with fishing first. The fishing vessel here will have two triangles or two cones that with the apexes pointing toward each other. At night, they would show green over white lighting. And then sailing, when they are actively motor sailing, they should be showing a upside down cone on their mast or on their forestay. And that's where how somebody, even if a sail is up, that's how somebody knows that they are actively motor sailing or being driven as a power boat. And I put all that here because little old power pleasure craft power boats down here, we have a responsibility to stay clear of all of these vessels in these circumstances, except when there is a sailing vessel that is actively motor sailing. Then, in fact, it becomes just a power boat. So there's just, really look at, pay attention to those day shapes. Start using day shapes if you're not familiar with them. Pull out your reference, and that's going to help you understand this hierarchy and be able to identify these traffic patterns a bit more. So I want to go to some common mistakes that our people may address. And often I hear, because I work with a lot of paddlers across the United States, they often think that paddlecraft are limited in their ability to maneuver. And so they erroneously believe that paddlecraft have some kind of special position within the navigation rules. And the answer to that is that there are no special exceptions, no special conditions for powercraft within the navigation rules. It's common sense for them to stay clear of the other vessels, to not be in traffic patterns. If they need to cross, for instance, a channel or whether it's a narrow channel or cutting across a traffic scheme, they should do so at right angles and cross quickly. They're not prohibited from being there, but the common sense and the reality of it is they should be conscious of what's going on around them and stay clear of the powered vessels as a general rule. We also hear a lot from a lot of sailboaters that sailboats under sail, everybody has to stay out of their way. And as we have just demonstrated here, that they also need to adhere to those responsibilities, those defined responsibilities between vessels, and understand and acknowledge that hierarchy of responsibilities. Probably, though, one of the biggest things that people just fail to do is to maintain a proper lookout. And this goes across all types of craft under all situations. And so I just wanted to remind people that lookout means by any available means. That means using your eyes, if you have electronic charts or AIS systems, which identify vessels and chart the movement of vessels electronically. If you have radar, binoculars, use your ears. It's very important to use all means possible during your lookout duties in order to avoid mistakes. And that goes back to this closing takeaway that I just wanted to share with you is that operator inattention and improper lookout remain year after year the highest contributing factors for boating incidents in the United States. They attribute to the highest number of reported incidents, the very high number of deaths. Only weather, hazardous waters, and alcohol use, which are also very, very prevalent when it comes to incidents and death. But look at the number of injuries over here from people who are not paying attention. They are not understanding the responsibilities to just look out for one another and do whatever it takes to avoid collision. And that's what the navigation rules provide to all of us. They lead to predictable boating behavior so that we can boat safely and have fun and stay out of the collision, avoid collisions between vessels and understand what your obligation is as a boat operator. So I've talked a lot. I apologize for that. But I did want to open up to see what questions or what discussion, anything that you want to share, an incident that that happened to you, that anything that you want to share with us. So please open up your mics, raise your hand. Let's talk.
Well, first, I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say great presentation, Pam. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us. I say this every boat on course training session, but I learn something every time we meet. So just thank you and kudos.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
great presentation.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Any questions? Do you have any comments? Anything that you may have that may have happened to you, or what kind of? Let me stop sharing so we can see each other. Anything you want to share with us from your experience today? Anyone?
Hey, Pam.
Yes.
I know you
Virgil.
talked about the pneumatic ways of little sayings
Yes.
of remembering. I think, and it's depending on how what clicks for you. I think you said
Yes.
white over red, captain is dead. I've always said red over red, the captain is dead.
And you're absolutely right. Did I say yes?
I mean,
Yes.
it kind of means the same when you're talking red over red, you're talking about a vessel not under command.
Yes.
And when you're talking about,
Yes.
white,
Red over
red,
red, the cat. Yes.
you're talking about a vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver. So both of them are caveats. You got to be careful if you see either one. So,
Thank you
but,
for
like I
the
said, I always
correction.
remembered it red over red. Captain is dead.
The captain is dead. Other comments or questions?
None on my end.
Well, hearing none, let me just share my screen again because I did want to give a shout out to future boat on course training sessions. The next one is coming up on May 12th, and it's about it covers Rule 30, and that's anchored vessels and vessels aground. That's led by Captain Sarah Lawrence. I'll say I never met Sarah Lawrence, but I love listening to her present. So please join in, and if you haven't had a chance to learn from Captain Sarah, then I would highly encourage you to do that. And with that, this concludes our boat on course session, and I'll just end with a quote from Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else. Thanks for participating in this session. to boat on course. And for more information, go to the safeboatingcouncil.org and the boatoncourse.com website.